Hello and a warm welcome to the programme. I'm Teniola Shoboale. We begin this week with stories and happenings that made headlines over the weekend.
South Sudan's main opposition leader, Riek Machar, told a visiting United Nations Security Council delegation on Sunday that he will not be part of any unity government next month, dashing the prospects of progress in a stalled peace process. The former rebel leader said the parties have failed to agree on ways to integrate the army, a key condition of a peace accord signed last year, and could not see how they could form a government without it. President Salva Kiir and Machar signed a peace deal in September 2018 after a string of failed agreements to end a civil conflict that has led to the deaths of hundreds of thousands, displaced a third of the population, and ruined the country's economy.
The Security Council called on parties of the agreement to expedite the process of implementing transitional security arrangements, to continue consultations on the issue of the number and boundaries of states, and to peacefully form the revitalized transitional government of national unity by November the 12th.
In May, the two sides agreed to form a unity government in 6 months, and in September said that they will establish a transitional government by November 12th as part of the deal. The World Health Organization said on Friday that Ebola is infecting and killing people in a gold mining area of Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. Speaking to a news conference, WHO Director General told a news conference that he accepted the independent panel's recommendation to maintain the emergency status and it could return due to instability in Eastern DRC.
It will end and we're giving it our best. But one thing I would like to underline here is, even if this Ebola ends, it may come back again because the preconditions are there. There is instability in Eastern DRC, and there is political instability, and there is lack of security.
The virus has infected some 3,227 people and killed about 2,104 of them since the outbreak was declared in August 2018 and goes on to become the world's second worst outbreak. The UN Human Rights Office called on Egypt on Friday to free a prominent blogger, lawyer and journalist allegedly mistreated in custody, who are among nearly 2,000 people detained since street protests began a month ago.
All those arrested and detained solely for exercising their rights or lending legal assistance to those who have been arrested should be released immediately. We also remind Egypt of its obligations under international law to respect and protect the right of a person not to be subjected to torture or cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment.
A state prosecutor's office said in late September that it had questioned a number not exceeding 1,000 suspects who took part in the demonstrations. Protests against President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi in Cairo and other cities have followed online calls for demonstrations against alleged government corruption.
To our main stories now, at least 31 people have been killed and 16 others injured after a bus veered off the road near the city of Mbanza Ngungu in the Democratic Republic of Congo and burst into flames. The administrator of the region, Dedia Nsimba, reports that the bus brakes may have failed, causing the accident. He adds that some of the victims' bodies have been taken to the Sunan-Kulu General Hospital. According to an injured passenger, more than 100 people had been in the vehicle at the time, and many bodies were burned beyond recognition. The bus carrying people and goods was traveling from Lufu to Kinshasa on Sunday. To politics now, the mayor of South Africa's commercial capital, Johannesburg, has resigned from his post and from the main opposition Democratic Alliance. Herman Mashaba said he could not reconcile himself with people who believe that race is not important in their discussions of inequalities and who undermines his pro-poor agenda. Mr. Mashaba's decision was sparked by Sunday's election of former leader Helen Zille to the second most powerful post in the party. Mr. Mashaba said he would step down next month, raising questions about whether the DA would be able to retain the mayor post in Johannesburg. Our South Africa Bureau Chief Betty Dibia has more.
The mayor of Johannesburg, Herman Mashaba, had threatened to take a walk, and today he made good on that threat.
It is not in my nature to wait for people to push me. I have lived my life on my terms. It is for this reason that I've called this press conference today to announce my resignation from the DA Democratic Alliance effective 27th November 2019. It is on the request of the party leadership that my resignation is held off until this date to afford them the opportunity to identify a new candidate to fill this position. By so doing, I will no longer serve as a Democratic Alliance councillor, and therefore I'm required to resign as Executive Mayor of the City of Johannesburg, effective on the same date.
Infighting in the main South African opposition party, the Democratic Alliance, has sometimes made the headlines. This weekend's election of former party leader Helen Zille as the DA Federal Council chairperson is the major trigger for Herman Mashaba, who refers to her as part of right-wing elements.
The election of Helen Zille as chairperson of Federal Council represents a victory for people in the DA who stand diametrically opposed to my beliefs and value system. And I believe those of most of South Africans of all backgrounds. I cannot reconcile myself with a group of people who believe that race is relevant in the discussion of inequality and poverty in South Africa in 2019. I cannot reconcile myself with people who do not see that South Africa is more unequal today than it was in 1994.
Ms. Zille has, of course, rejected the right-wing tag, reminding the outgoing mayor that her anti-apartheid credentials are unquestionable. Meanwhile, the leader of the DA, Musi Maimane, says despite his disappointment, he respects Mayor Mashaba's decision.
The project is not finished. The work must continue. The party itself will take consideration of the announcement today by Mayor Mashaba. That will then serve before a federal executive to which considerations need to be made.
Herman Mashaba, who has been mayor of Johannesburg since 2016, will serve until November the 27th to allow a smooth transition to a successor.
Away from politics and to diplomatic relations, Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari has departed Abuja for Sochi, Russia, to attend a three-day Russia-Africa summit holding between October 23rd to 25th, with emphasis on exploring and expanding opportunities in security, trade, investment, science and technology, as well as gas production. A statement by the presidential spokesman says President Buhari will, on the sidelines of the summit, meet with President Vladimir Putin of Russia to further strengthen relations in security, trade and investment, in addition to building partnership that will enhance Nigeria's huge gas potential following Russia's remarkable success in gas exportation. The summit, which will be attended by African heads of state, is expected to bring fresh perspectives on some global issues and challenges like nuclear technology, energy development, digital transformation, environment, technical security, mining and steel, education, agriculture, infrastructure and development strategies. The statement adds that an African Business Forum, which will bring together African and Russian business leaders, will also be held during the event to promote Russian investments in Africa and boost African business interests in the host country. President Buhari will be accompanied on his trip by several high-ranking government officials and is expected back in the country after the summit. Meanwhile, Russia's President Vladimir Putin has said his country can offer help to Africa without the conditions attached by Western powers. In an interview with TASS news agency ahead of the Sochi summit with African leaders, he says there is an array of Western countries resorting to pressure, intimidation and blackmail of sovereign African governments, using such methods to try to return lost influence and dominance in their former colonies in a new guise, and rushing to pump out maximum profits and to exploit the continent. Mr. Putin is expecting to host 47 African leaders at the summit in the Black Sea resort. Mr. Putin says his relations with Africa had improved, pointing to military cooperation agreements that Russia currently has with more than 30 African countries, which it supplies arms to. Rwanda is among countries that have deepened relations with Russia. Now, Zimbabwe's President Emmerson Mnangagwa is expected to meet with local business executives in a bid to stabilize the price of basic commodities. In June, annual inflation stood at 176%, and estimates suggest that it could be above 200%. There are fears that the country could be sliding back in hyperinflation. President Mnangagwa, while addressing local leaders, is quoted as saying that the government sees no justification for the high prices, and he wants to hear the challenges being faced by the business community. He also accuses the country's striking doctors of working with external forces to destabilize the health sector. One of the doctors' complaints is that their salaries have not kept up with inflation. Let's get more on this from a Zimbabwean journalist, Nigel Yamatumbu. Hello, Nigel. Thanks for joining us on Network Africa. What issues can we expect from the president's business meeting with top executives?
Hello, greetings to you and greetings to the viewers. Yes, President Emmerson Mnangagwa has reportedly summoned the business community, captains of industry in Zimbabwe to discuss the current situation wherein inflation continues to spiral and where the prices are skyrocketing. The causes for this particular rise in the prices of goods and services is really predicated on how the Zimbabwean dollar continues to crush against the United States dollar, and which will obviously have a ripple effect, particularly in a country like Zimbabwe, wherein only a few months ago, before the government's intervention, the country was pretty much re-dollarizing itself. So yes, President Mnangagwa wants an open and interactive discussion with the business community, hoping to find a middle ground to this impasse.
I mean, this issue has been building up for a while now. It's nothing new, but is this meeting a welcome development for citizens? Are they optimistic about the results this might achieve?
Well, there is a sense of a bit of a loss of confidence among citizens, to be honest, with this government. If you are to judge by the general sentiment, particularly in the urban areas. Of course, yes, the ruling party still enjoys, and President Mnangagwa still enjoys support, predominantly within the rural areas, and of course with some loyalists. But the generality of citizens, even if we are to use the by-elections or the participation by citizens in the reform process that is ongoing, that is, the revision of the laws, there is disenfranchisement, and there is this, general mistrust on whether actually the country's leadership has a solution to the problems and challenges that the country is facing. But suffice to say, one really hopes that this would translate into something meaningful for the people, because as it is certainly not normal, and an urgent intervention is required.
All right, Nigel, we do hope it does translate to something meaningful. And Nigel Yamatumbu, Zimbabwean journalist, speaking to us there from Harare.